I was 23 when they cut me off. Just a small mistake. But apparently, that was all it took to make me nothing to them. My name's Riley, and my family has always been, well, complicated. I never really fit in. The black sheep, I guess. Growing up, I could never do anything right in their eyes. No matter how much I tried to please them, it was never enough. But the thing that really broke me was the day my dad and his side of the family turned their backs on me for a slip-up that was barely worth mentioning. It all started when I made a mistake in a business deal. I had just started my own small company and was trying to prove myself to my parents. They always thought I was too ambitious, too unrealistic with my dreams. The deal wasn't huge, but it was something I was genuinely excited about. I had been working day and night, putting in everything I had to make it happen. But I was naive, trusting the wrong person, letting things go too quickly. In the end, the deal fell through, and I lost some money. It wasn't catastrophic, but it stung. When I called my parents to explain, I thought they'd offer advice or, at the very least, comfort. Instead, my dad's voice was cold, sharp, and full of judgment. He didn't care about the lessons I learned from it. He didn't care that I was still standing and trying again. All he saw was failure. "This is why we told you not to get involved with those people," he said. "You're making a fool of yourself." I tried to explain myself, but before I could even finish, he interrupted. "You've done enough damage. We don't need you causing any more embarrassment. Maybe it's time to step back and focus on something smaller. You're nothing to us now." And just like that, it was over. I couldn't even get a word in. My mom was silent on the other end, but I could hear her agreeing with everything he said. The rest of the family took his side, as they always did. My cousins, aunts, and uncles. Everyone was quick to throw me out of the picture. I was crushed. Completely crushed. I thought about how hard I had tried over the years to make them proud, but all they saw was failure. There was no room for second chances in their world. For the next few years, I kept my distance. I focused on my business, learned from my mistakes, and built something new, something I could be proud of. I stopped reaching out to them, stopped trying to prove myself. It was painful at first. There were birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings where I was completely left out. I watched from a distance as they posted pictures together, as if I had never existed. My grandmother, though, she kept in touch. Grandma was the only one who ever seemed to believe in me, always telling me that I had potential, that I just needed to keep going. It was the little messages from her that kept me going, but even those stopped after a while. I wasn't really sure why, but I assumed it was because my dad had gotten to her, too. 10 years passed. A decade of silence. I had moved on, for the most part. I wasn't the same naive kid anymore. My business had grown into something significant, and I had become successful in my own right. I didn't need them, not anymore. But then came the call. It was from my lawyer. "Riley, I have some news for you," he said, his voice shaky. "I've just received your grandfather's will." I froze. My grandfather, who had passed away a few months ago, had been the one person in the family who seemed to genuinely care about me. He wasn't like the others. He saw past my mistakes, saw the potential I had. I never expected to inherit anything from him. He had a lot of money, but he had always been so secretive about his will. "The will? It's complicated," my lawyer continued, "but there's something you need to know. Your grandfather left everything to you." I sat there for a moment, stunned. Everything? The house, the investments, the business? It didn't make sense. My dad had always been the golden child, the one who got everything handed to him. Why would my grandfather leave me anything? "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Everything?" "Yes," my lawyer confirmed. "It's all yours. But there's more. The rest of your family, they were cut out. They don't inherit anything." I hung up the phone and just sat there, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions that hit me. Part of me felt vindicated, like I had been proven right. But the other part of me? The part that had been abandoned and hurt for so many years? That part was angry, furious. I wasn't sure what to do with this information at first. But then, the phone rang again. It was my dad. "Riley," he said, his voice filled with desperation, "we need to talk." I could barely hold back the laughter. After all these years of being nothing to them, now they wanted to talk? Now they were desperate to reconnect? I hadn't heard from him in nearly a decade, and now that my grandfather's money was involved, suddenly they were interested again. About what? I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "What exactly do you need to talk about?" "We made a mistake, Riley," he said. "We were wrong to cut you off. We want to fix things. Please, come back. We're family." "Family?" I echoed, bitterness lacing my words. Funny how you only remember that word now, after Grandpa's will. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could practically feel him squirming. Riley, you don't understand. We need you. You're the only one who can help us now. I raised an eyebrow. Help you? After everything you did? After you kicked me out of the family for a small mistake? Now you want my help? You want me to come back? He stammered for a moment, clearly trying to find the right words. It's not like that. We're struggling. We need you to make it right. You know how things were with Grandpa's will. We didn't get anything, and we need your support. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. They were begging me now. Begging for what? Money? Forgiveness? Both? I think it's time for you to realize something, I said coldly. You don't get to come back into my life just because you need something from me. You abandoned me when I needed you the most. Now that the tables have turned, you think you can just waltz in and ask for my help. I could hear him sigh, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. Riley, please. We're family. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I hung up the phone and stared at the wall, feeling a strange mix of emotions wash over me. I was angry, hurt, and yet there was something else, too. A sense of satisfaction, maybe even power. But this wasn't over yet. I wasn't sure what to do next. Part of me wanted to cut them off for good, to leave them to deal with their own mess. But another part of me? The part that had suffered for so many years, the part that had been wronged, that part wanted to make them feel the consequences of what they did. I had everything now. The money, the property, the power to make decisions. I could decide their fate, just like they had decided mine years ago. But how far was I willing to go? And then, I got another call. This one was different. Riley, it was my cousin's voice. You've got to help us. They're begging, but we don't know what to do. You're the only one who can fix this. I stared at the phone, feeling a cold shiver run down my spine. It seemed like my family was falling apart. And now, they needed me more than ever. But did I want to be the one to pick up the pieces? The decision wasn't going to be easy. And whatever I chose, I knew it was going to change everything. I stood there, frozen, staring at the phone in my hand. My cousin's voice echoed in my mind. You're the only one who can fix this. I didn't know how to process it. For so long, I had been the one who was abandoned, the one who was ignored and tossed aside like I didn't matter. Now, they wanted me to help. Now, they wanted me to save them. It was maddening. But more than that, it was an opportunity. An opportunity to make them see just how wrong they had been all those years. I hung up the phone without saying anything, not because I didn't have a response, but because I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, frustration, and a deep sense of satisfaction. They thought they could throw me away and then come crawling back when they needed something, but what they didn't know was that I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to let them off easy. Over the next few days, my phone was bombarded with calls, voicemails, and texts. My dad, my aunt, even my uncle, all of them begging me to come back, begging me to help them with the inheritance. They weren't even pretending to care about me anymore. It was all about the money, my grandfather's estate, the property, the business. They wanted a piece of it, and they were hoping I would be the one to save them from the mess they had gotten themselves into. They had no idea what they were dealing with. I waited a few days before responding to any of their messages. I wanted them to sweat it out, to feel that anxiety, that fear, just like I had felt all those years. They needed to understand what it felt like to be rejected, to be cast aside as if you were nothing. But more than that, I wanted them to understand that I was in control now, not them. Finally, I decided to take action. I called my lawyer and told him to prepare everything I needed for a meeting with the family. I wasn't going to just show up and listen to their pleading. I wanted to make them pay for what they had done. I wanted them to understand the cost of abandoning me, the cost of treating me like I was invisible. When the day came, I walked into the meeting room with my lawyer by my side. My family was already there, gathered around the large wooden table, their eyes scanning me as I entered. The look on their faces was a mix of relief and guilt. They were relieved that I had shown up, but guilty because they knew they had messed up. My dad spoke first, his voice shaky but hopeful. Riley, I'm glad you're here. We've made some mistakes. We know we hurt you, and we're sorry for that. But we're a family, and we need each other. Please, let's move past this. I could see the desperation in his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Not after everything they had done. You want to move past it? I said, my voice calm but laced with bitterness. Funny. I don't remember you ever wanting to move past it when you threw me away 10 years ago. When you decided that a small mistake was enough to make me nothing. The room went silent. My dad shifted in his chair, his face turning red. He didn't know how to respond to that. I'm not here because I'm feeling generous, I continued. I'm here because you all have something I want, and you're going to pay for it. The tension in the room thickened. My family members exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to react. My cousin, the one who had called me earlier, looked at me with wide eyes, pleading silently for me to back down, but I wasn't going to. This was my moment. We're not asking for much, my aunt finally spoke, her voice strained. Just a fair share, Riley. Grandpa would have wanted us to have something. Grandpa? I scoffed. The same grandpa who made it clear that he trusted me and not any of you? The same grandpa who left everything to me, not you. My dad's face darkened, and I could see the anger building in his eyes. This is ridiculous, Riley. You're being unreasonable. We're your family. You can't just cut us out like this. Cut you out? I said, laughing bitterly. You did that to me 10 years ago. You had no problem cutting me out of your lives when I made a mistake. Well, guess what? I'm not making the same mistake. This time, I'm in control. And you're going to learn what it means to treat someone like I don't matter. The room was silent for a moment. My family was clearly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, but none of them dared to speak. They knew they had pushed me too far. They knew that I was right. I'll tell you what, I said, leaning forward and looking each of them in the eye. I'll help you. But it's going to cost you. You want a piece of this inheritance? You'll pay for it. And you'll do exactly what I say. No more pretending like everything's fine. No more acting like you can walk all over me. If you want me back in your lives, you better prove that you deserve it. There was a long pause, and then my dad, finally defeated, let out a deep sigh. What do you want from us, Riley? I want your respect, I said, my voice steady and cold. I want you to acknowledge how wrong you were. I want you to admit that you hurt me. And if you can't do that, then you can walk away and never see me again. They were all quiet for a while, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They knew that they had no choice but to agree. They were desperate, and I had the upper hand. Finally, my dad spoke again, his voice low and resigned. Okay, we'll do what you want. Just, please, don't cut us out forever. I stood up and looked at them, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. Good. This is just the beginning. Don't think for a second that you've earned my forgiveness. But you've bought yourself a chance. As I turned to leave, I could hear the soft murmurs behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had one, and I would make them remember that. But there was still one thing I hadn't decided yet. What to do with all the power I held in my hands. The next few weeks passed in a blur of negotiations, subtle threats, and my family's desperate attempts to prove they were worthy of the inheritance. They did everything I asked, apologized at every opportunity, bent over backwards to make amends, and promised never to repeat the mistakes they had made in the past. They were acting as if their very survival depended on me, and in a way, it did. But I wasn't satisfied. I needed more than just words. I needed them to understand the depth of their betrayal. As they tried to kiss up to me, I sat back, watching with detached amusement. It wasn't that I was cruel, but I had learned long ago that people don't change without a little discomfort. They had all gotten so used to being on top, used to me being the one they could ignore, that they hadn't even considered the consequences of pushing me away. I wasn't going to let them off the hook that easily. It became a game of power. Every time they asked for something, I made them work for it. I didn't give them an inch of leeway, reminding them constantly of the hurt they had caused. They tried to do the family thing, family dinners, hugs, heartfelt conversations, but every time I saw my dad or aunt, all I could think about was how they had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. How easily they had dismissed me. I kept them at arm's length, letting them squirm for my approval, and it felt oddly satisfying. But as time went on, something started to gnaw at me. The more I watched them grovel, the more I realized just how far they had fallen. They weren't the people I remembered, the people I had once loved. They were desperate, hollow shells of their former selves, willing to do anything for a piece of what they thought was rightfully theirs. But I couldn't let them have it without making them pay for what they had done. And then, one day, I got the phone call. It was from my lawyer. My grandfather's will was final, and everything was officially in my hands. The property, the business, the bank accounts, everything. But there was one thing that stopped me in my tracks, a clause in the will I hadn't seen before. It was a condition, a very specific condition. If I wanted to inherit everything, I had to make a decision within a certain time frame. whether or not to share the wealth with my family. The decision was mine, but the stakes were high. If I didn't share it, I would lose everything. If I did, I would gain even more than I had ever expected. But the real kicker was that the clause explicitly mentioned that my family had to prove they were worthy by fulfilling a series of tasks. Tasks that I could assign. Suddenly, everything became clear. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was about something much deeper. It was about power, about how much control I could wield over them, how much I could force them to work for what they thought they deserved. And I was in the perfect position to make them regret every single decision they had ever made that hurt me. I let the phone sit in my hand for a moment, contemplating. What kind of tasks would I give them? How far could I push them before they finally broke? It didn't take long for me to come up with a plan. I called my dad first, as he was the most desperate to fix things. I've decided to consider helping you all, but it won't be easy, I said, keeping my tone calm and collected. There's a list of things you need to do first, and I'll be watching closely. If you fail at any of them, I'll make sure you get nothing. There was a pause on the other end of the line before he spoke. What do you want us to do? I smiled, imagining the look on his face. I want you to start with something simple. I want you to apologize to me, not just for what happened 10 years ago, but for the way you've treated me since. I want you to make it clear that you understand exactly what you did wrong. His voice wavered. You want an apology? You're not serious. I'm very serious, I replied coldly. And I'm not done. I want you to call Aunt Linda and Uncle Mark. They need to apologize to me, too. They were part of this. They need to understand the consequences of what they did. Once you all do that, we'll talk about the next step. My dad was silent for a long moment, the weight of what I was asking him dawning on him. Fine, he said finally, his voice strained. We'll do it. But after that, we want something in return. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, you'll get something in return, all right. But you'll have to earn it. I hung up and sat back, savoring the moment. They had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. The tasks I had planned for them were just the beginning. They would bend to my will, one step at a time, until they had nothing left but the realization that they would never again have the same power over me. Days passed. My dad and the rest of the family followed through, sending me carefully worded apologies, begging for my forgiveness. The words they used were so rehearsed, so desperate, that I almost felt pity for them. Almost. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed them to understand just how much they had underestimated me. So, I came up with the next task. I called them all together for a family meeting. My dad, my aunt, my uncle, and even my cousin, who had started this whole thing by reaching out to me in the first place. They all showed up, looking at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I could see the tension in their eyes, the way they were all trying to anticipate what I might say next. They knew I was playing with them, but they had no idea just how far I was willing to go. Now that you've all apologized, I said, my voice cool, it's time for the next step. I want you to sell everything you own, the house, the car, the business, everything. You're going to donate the money to charity. All of it. There was a collective gasp around the table. My dad looked like he might pass out. You want us to donate everything? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. To charity? Exactly, I said, leaning back in my chair. And if you don't, then you'll get nothing. Not a single penny from the inheritance. You'll be right back where you started. It felt good to have them at my mercy. But as I looked around the room, something started to change in me. Something I hadn't expected. A part of me began to wonder if I was becoming as ruthless and cold as they had been to me all those years ago. Was this truly justice, or was I just sinking to their level? Before I could dwell on it too much, I silenced the thought. This wasn't the time to second-guess myself. They had hurt me. Now it was my turn. As the days passed after I gave them the ultimatum, I could feel the tension thickening with every passing moment. They were running out of time, and the weight of my demands hung over them like a sword poised to fall. I watched as my family scrambled, trying to pull together enough money to meet the deadline I had set. My dad, in particular, was on the verge of a breakdown. His face was gaunt from sleepless nights, and his once confident posture had turned to slumped shoulders as he tried to gather what little he had left. At the same time, something inside me began to shift. I had wanted this, wanted to see them sweat, wanted to feel that sense of control. But as I watched them struggle, a strange emptiness began to creep in. Was this truly justice? Or had I become just another villain in a story that had started with a betrayal? The final day arrived, and my family gathered in front of me, drained, defeated. My dad's eyes were hollow, his suit slightly wrinkled from the days of frantic meetings and phone calls. My aunt, Uncle Mark, and my cousin stood beside him, all of them nervous and exhausted. But no one said a word. The silence was deafening as I looked at them. Finally, my dad spoke up, his voice thick with regret. "We've done it. We've sold everything. All the money we made, it's been donated, just like you asked." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "You've won. You got what you wanted." I could see the pain in his eyes. He had been broken, and while I had set out to punish him and my family for what they had done to me, a strange feeling started to rise within me. I wasn't sure what it was, guilt, maybe, or just an overwhelming sense of emptiness. They had lost everything, but in the process, I had lost a piece of myself too. "Good," I said, my voice flat. "You fulfilled your part. Now, you can have what you've been asking for." They all seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. But I could see it in their faces. They weren't just relieved, they were terrified. I had pushed them to the edge, made them pay in ways they never thought they would have to. And now, they were at my mercy, waiting for me to hand over what they thought was rightfully theirs. But before I could speak again, my cousin stepped forward. He had been quiet throughout most of this ordeal, keeping his head down. But now, he met my gaze directly, his voice steady. "I don't think this is what Grandpa would have wanted," he said, his tone firm. "You've gotten everything. But are you really happy? Because it doesn't look like it." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been so focused on revenge, so consumed with making them pay, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I really wanted. The satisfaction I had expected from their suffering had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming emptiness. My family was broken, and I had been the one who had broken them. I looked at my cousin, the weight of his words sinking in. "What do you mean?" He shook his head. "I mean, we're all here because of one mistake. But none of this was supposed to be about money. Grandpa left us something far more valuable, his love, his wisdom, his trust. You've proven that you're capable of getting revenge, but are you capable of forgiveness?" I looked around at the rest of my family, who were all waiting for my decision, their faces a mixture of hope and fear. For a moment, I felt like I was drowning. I had been so focused on making them pay that I had forgotten why I was even doing this in the first place. Then, I made my decision. I stood up slowly, my eyes scanning their faces. "I've made you all suffer. And while you deserved it, I'm not proud of what I've done. I wanted you to feel the pain I've felt. But in the end, I've only made things worse." My dad's eyes widened as he realized what I was about to say. "Wait, you're not going to take it all back, are you?" I smiled sadly, shaking my head. "No, I'm not taking it back. But I'm going to make sure we move forward from this. I won't hold this over you anymore. The inheritance is still mine, but I'm going to help you rebuild. We'll find a way to move past all of this." I could see the disbelief on their faces, mixed with a hint of relief. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But I had learned that revenge didn't bring the satisfaction I had hoped for. What I really needed was closure, both for me and for them. In the weeks that followed, I worked with my family to help them rebuild what they had lost. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of difficult conversations, and we all had to face the truth about what we had done to each other. But gradually, things started to change. The walls of resentment and anger came down, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were starting to heal. In the end, I didn't just inherit money or property. I inherited something more valuable, the ability to forgive, to move on, and to rebuild. And that, in the end, was worth more than any inheritance my grandfather could have left me.